Hello, welcome back to my channel. We all heard the phrase that we all have a purpose on this earth. Did we not? Oh yes. But what if it's a little more hyped than what our society has often told us? What if it's more comforting than it is of truth? Why would society say something like this in the first place? Well, the main reason I think our society usually says this is to keep the machine running, is to keep the system running. We are meant to preserve life. That's our default motto, is to preserve life at all costs. To keep the system running, to keep the machine running. And anyone that goes against the norm could be a threat. That's the real truth. The norm, people want predictability and stability, not necessarily happiness, unfortunately. Unfortunately, not always happiness, but something that's familiar, something that was passed down from generation to generation to generation, from what our ancestors had to go through. However, we did make a lot of turns, the Gen Zs especially have been questioning, do we want the same paths that our parents did or our grandparents did? And that's what's been a big kicker in the 2020s era, especially 2025, 2026 this year. And then, we come a long way from, the 1950s, where you were supposed to have a steady job, have a partner, have kids. But now we're into the idea, maybe we want more than that. And then, it was to usually, but maybe the purpose isn't a one-size-fits-all purpose anymore, which is, been going on lately with our society. Also, I think a lot of it was keep the machine running, even if it doesn't care about you. That's why a lot of people are trying to escape the 9-to-5, like with an employer who can take you out like that or let you go like that. And that's what was really, the hard truth about it. But we're starting to realize also these 9-to-5 jobs, especially with the productivity versus worth. A lot of the times, I hate to admit it, but a little secret, the 9-to-5, and a lot of it is not necessarily actual work, but it's a test to see how, if you're obedient, you don't disrupt the system. They want you compliant and shrinking, not necessarily learning. They want you to just follow along, regardless of what BS they have to sell. They want to see if you will not question the system, which has been quite frustrating for a lot of people. And sometimes they want to do some work that feels meaningful than just being a teacher's pet or a manager's pet. I think that's what was the big factor of this. And also, there is also with the YouTube, like if you go on YouTube and the algorithms, the productivity over worth with that is to see if the audience picks up on it. And the algorithms are based off if your audience likes it, shares it, not necessarily subscribe. Subscribe is a good thing, and it can definitely lead you to a quicker path for your video. But also the comments, that's what brings it up the YouTube ladder. Like, you know how the corporate ladder, you kind of, you're the best servant for the system. That's sort of what YouTube is in a lot of ways. It's if you could serve the system. And if you could serve the system, you could have more ads. And your video can have a sense of purpose. And then some get discarded. And then humans, on the other hand, people, the general audience, they want to see something that they can relate to, what they need at that particular moment. They want to conserve their energy and find the quickest result, the quickest thing, like, how do I get my kid, how do I pat my kid, if he's choking, in the quickest way possible. Also, or, what am I doing wrong? Why is my Nintendo Switch draining out? Why is, what's an easy way, to enjoy a healthy dinner, that tastes delicious, We want to conserve our energy. We want to find something that's quick and usually not as long of a video. We want fast pace, a quicker video, and also a one that YouTube provides immediately rather than it just being off the radar. Humans have always been like this. I don't like to say we're lazy creatures, but in an essence, we want fast pace, especially in today's day and age. And with our attention spans always, going down the drain a little. And that's why, like I mentioned about ChatGPT, we want quick results. People aren't as patient anymore. People want results. People want to spend time with their family. People want to do this. People want to do that. People want to travel, And that's what's, getting there. And then we also hear the motto of, work smarter, not work harder. We don't want to put more hours than necessary. We don't want to, have to do dull tasks for a long time. We want to be able to work at a sufficient pace doing what we love or doing the thing we enjoy, but in a quicker way so we can get back to things we love, to hobbies, to whatever is out there. That's what's the main thing about it. We have this, and unfortunately, we have this existential pressure to make our lives have meaning. We were always told, compete with this person, compete with that person, compare ourselves. We always hear about keeping up with the Joneses, trying to see the best cars, trying to have the best luxury, sometimes the best well-behaved kids, the best family looking, you know. We constantly compare ourselves for existential pressure. I'm going to get it a little mixed up. Sorry. And it's sometimes, unfortunately, leads to constant comparison. And we're also learning about now, it's not necessarily the best way to keep up with the Joneses. You don't know what someone else is going through. You don't know. And sometimes the ones that look flashy and have the best items and stuff, like the best cars or all that, are more broke than you are. They can't pay off, they can barely pay for a cup of coffee. So that's why it's also important not to keep up with the Joneses and try to not compare yourself to others, which a lot of it had to do with social media and Facebook. And that's the harsh truth about all those Instagram and Facebook and Twitter. They make you see that your friends, I don't even know if they're really your friends, they sometimes are just your acquaintances, but showing that they have the best, you know, I don't know, the best girlfriend, the best boyfriend, the best, living in paradise, or going at, having the nicest vacation, when you never know. I mean, it could have been nice at that particular moment, but maybe the rest of the trip was horrible and a nightmare in all other ways possible. But sometimes social media, they try to have the positives, hype up the positives, and make others feel jealous of it, which unfortunately can be like that. And we always have to outbeat them, you know, kind of like in YouTube, kind of in a 9-to-5 job in order to get the promotion, you know. You have to compete your neighbors and outperform them, you know, which is unfortunately a very, very sad thing. And then also, a lot of people say this about why some people really want to leave the 9-to-5 is because they're tired of mediocrity. Aha. See again? They're trying to, they see all these other people potentially looking happy. Like when they're out of the, out of the 9-to-5 rat race, and they try to brand how wonderful entrepreneurship is. And the entrepreneurship has its own struggles. It has its own struggles. When you have to work 24/7, where you can't necessarily just clock out. Being an entrepreneur has its challenges too. But yes, the idea that people don't want mediocrity and the escape and this idea of freedom, so to speak. Yes, and some people actually enjoy it, like when they go on YouTube, work for YouTube. They don't necessarily have to respond to a boss. They respond to algorithms, but not necessarily people, which could be satisfying for them. So, but, you know, sometimes if you want to have a purpose, the best way is not to compare yourself with others, because you really don't know what they're going through. You don't know. what goes on behind the curtains in someone else's life. It's, that's the honest truth. And the harsh reality is, are you really going to want to constantly compare yourself to others all your life? Here's the sad truth. We're all going to go someday. No one's going to live forever. That's the harsh truth. And do you want to live like having to compare yourself and having to compete with other people all the time? That's my take on this. Let me know what you have to say in the comments. And I'll talk to you soon. All right, bye.